Snow fell thick and heavy in the old forest, wrapping everything in silence. The only sound was the rhythmic thud of Gareth Holt's axe as it bit into a tall pine. The man was huge, broad-shouldered, bearded, and built like a mountain. People in the nearby town called him the giant Lumberjack, though he lived alone far from everyone. He liked the quiet, the wood smoke, and the company of trees more than people. The evening sky turned gray as the last light faded. Gareth leaned on his axe, breathing clouds into the cold air. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked around. "That's enough for today," he muttered, his voice deep and rough. He started loading chopped logs onto his sled when something strange happened. From deep in the forest came a sound, soft, faint, and trembling, a cry. At first he thought it was a fox or a wounded bird, but then he heard it again. Two small voices, high-pitched, scared, and calling for help. Gareth froze, his eyes narrowing toward the sound. It came from somewhere near the creek behind the ridge. He grabbed his axe and his lantern, lighting it with a spark. The wind whispered through the trees as he moved closer. Snow crunched beneath his heavy boots, each step echoing in the still air. The forest had grown darker, the trees closer together. The sound came again, this time clearer. "But please, help." It wasn't human. The words were strange, but he understood their meaning somehow. The voice was soft, frightened, and small. Gareth pushed through a wall of frozen branches until he reached a hollow log lying near the creek. He knelt beside it, lowering his lantern. Inside the hollow, curled together like frightened kittens, were two tiny creatures. They were barely a foot tall, with thin, glowing blue skin and white hair that shimmered like snow. Their large silver eyes blinked at him in fear. They looked weak, bones showing through their fragile arms, clothes torn, and tiny fingers gripping each other tightly. Gareth's breath caught. "What in the name of—" One of them squeaked and hid behind the other. The braver one stared up at him, shaking but trying to speak. "Please, help, sister." Cold, the way she said cold hit him hard. The tiny being's voice cracked like glass. He saw frost forming on their skin. They were freezing to death. Without thinking, Gareth took off his thick coat and wrapped both of them inside it. They let out tiny gasps but didn't resist. He could feel how cold they were, like ice in his hands. "It's all right," he said gently. "You're safe now. Let's get you somewhere warm." But as he lifted them, his trained hunter's instinct made him stop. He looked around, his lantern light sweeping through the trees. The snow wasn't smooth anymore. There were marks, deep prints leading toward where the twins had been hiding. Big prints, clawed, fresh. Something had been following them. The forest was silent again, but not peaceful. Gareth felt it, the kind of silence that comes when something dangerous is close. He heard a low growl in the distance, faint and unnatural, like metal grinding against stone. He didn't wait to see what it was. He adjusted his coat bundle carefully and began walking fast toward his cabin. The journey back felt longer than usual. The snow seemed to fall thicker, the trees whispering strange sounds. Every now and then, the twins whimpered softly inside his coat. Once, one of them peeked out and looked up at him. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, filled with both fear and trust. "What are you two?" he whispered to himself. "Where did you come from?" The wind gave no answer. When he reached his cabin, he pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The warmth of the fire hit him immediately. He quickly set the twins near the hearth, unwrapping his coat. They both shivered violently, but their eyes darted around the room, curious and afraid. "Easy now," he said softly. "You're safe here." He knelt, lighting the lanterns one by one, filling the room with golden light. The cabin was simple: wooden walls, stone fireplace, shelves filled with tools and jars of food. Everything smelled of pine and smoke. The smaller twin hid behind her sister, peeking out from time to time. Gareth noticed tiny frost burns on their hands. He poured warm water into a bowl and brought it to them. "Drink this slowly." The older twin looked at him suspiciously. "You human?" Gareth blinked. "Yeah, human. What about you?" The little one tried to speak, but her words were strange. "We, not from here, we, run away," he repeated, puzzled. "From who?" They didn't answer. The older one just stared into the fire. Her expression was far too serious for a child. Gareth didn't press. Instead, he cooked a small pot of soup and placed it near them. The smell made their eyes widen. They ate with trembling hands, little spoons almost too big for them. As they ate, Gareth finally smiled. "You've got names?" The older one pointed at herself. Leary. Then she pointed at her sister. Luna. Leary and Luna, he said softly. Pretty names. The smaller twin smiled weakly for the first time. You, name? Gareth, he replied. Gareth Holt. Gareth, she repeated slowly as if testing the sound. Big, like tree. He laughed, a deep sound that filled the cabin. Aye, that's what folks say. After they finished eating, the twins started to relax. Luna curled up near the fire, falling asleep instantly. Leary stayed awake, her big eyes studying Gareth carefully. She seemed to sense he was different. Kind, maybe, or just lonely. You help us, she said quietly. Why? Gareth looked at her, thinking. Because you needed help, he said simply. That's what decent folk do. Leary tilted her head as if she didn't understand the word decent. Then she looked down and whispered something under her breath, something in a language Gareth didn't know. It sounded like a prayer. Outside, the wind howled louder. Gareth stood, walked to the door, and checked the locks. He peered through the frosted window. Nothing moved, but in the distance he thought he saw a red glow between the trees. It flickered once, then vanished. He frowned and shut the curtain. When he turned back, Leary was staring at him. They come, she said softly. Who? He asked. She pointed toward the window. Hunters. Gareth's heartbeat slowed. He didn't understand what she meant, but the fear in her eyes was real. You're safe here, he said again, trying to sound confident. But deep down he wasn't sure. He threw more wood into the fire, making the flames rise high. The room glowed warm and orange. He sat on his chair, watching over the twins as they slept. The silence stretched long into the night. Outside, snow kept falling, thick and endless. Then, sometime after midnight, Gareth woke suddenly. A sound, faint, metallic, echoed from the woods. Like a chain dragging across frozen ground, he grabbed his axe and stepped to the window. In the distance, just beyond the tree line, he saw it again. 2 red lights slowly moving through the darkness. They weren't lanterns. They were eyes. Whatever had followed the twins was here. Gareth's jaw tightened. He looked back at the sleeping children. They breathed softly under his coat, unaware. For a long moment he stood there listening. Then he turned to the fire, grabbed a burning log and threw it into the stove to dim the light. The cabin went half dark, shadows dancing on the walls. He whispered to himself, If anyone's hunting kids tonight. They picked the wrong woods. The wind rattled the windows. Outside, the red eyes blinked once more and disappeared into the night. The night dragged on like a slow, heavy dream. Snow hit the cabin roof softly and the fire burned low. Gareth Holt sat in his wooden chair, his axe resting beside him. His eyes stayed on the small figures sleeping near the fireplace, 2 tiny alien girls wrapped in his wool blanket. He should have been resting too. But the image of those red eyes out in the woods wouldn't leave his mind. He had lived in this forest for 12 years, and never once had he seen anything like that. No animal had eyes that glowed like fire. The wind outside howled again, pressing against the windows as if trying to get in. Gareth stood up and checked the locks one more time. His instincts told him danger was close. He pulled the curtains tighter and then sat near the fire again. The twins were huddled together, tiny chests rising and falling slowly. The smaller one, Luna, muttered in her sleep, soft alien words that sounded like music. Her sister, Leary, had one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Even asleep, she looked ready to defend her. Gareth sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. What kind of world did you 2 come from? He whispered to himself. When dawn came, pale and weak through the window, Gareth was already outside, chopping more wood. He didn't want to leave the twins alone for long, but he needed firewood before the next snowstorm. His axe swung rhythmically, crack, thud, crack, until his muscles burned. As he picked up a log, he noticed strange tracks near the edge of the clearing. They weren't from any creature he knew. Long, deep grooves in the snow, as if something had slid across it. The prints circled his cabin once, then vanished into the trees. Gareth's stomach tightened. Whatever had followed them last night had come close. He dropped the logs quickly and went back inside. The cabin was warm, the fire burning bright again. Leary was awake, sitting cross-legged on the table, her silver eyes fixed on him. You go out? She asked, her English still broken but improving. Yeah, Gareth said. Needed firewood. You 2 hungry? Leary nodded and pointed toward her sister, still sleeping soundly. She tired. No food long time. Gareth started cooking breakfast, simple eggs, bread, and hot milk. The smell filled the room, and Luna stirred awake, blinking her shiny eyes. When Gareth handed her a cup, she smiled shyly and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was soft, musical, almost childlike. But there was sadness in it, too. As they ate, Gareth studied them closely. Their skin wasn't like human skin. It shimmered faintly, glowing when the light touched it. Tiny crystal dots ran along their necks like stars, and their eyes, too deep, too knowing. "You said last night you ran away," Gareth said quietly. "From who?" Leary looked down. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Hunters, bad ones. They hurt small ones like us." "Why?" Gareth asked, confused. "You two children. What could they want with you?" Leary didn't answer. She just whispered something in her own language again, holding her sister close. Gareth understood the look, though. Fear mixed with memories she didn't want to talk about. He decided not to push further. "You're safe here," he said again, this time with more weight in his voice. "No one's going to hurt you while I'm around." Luna's eyes filled with tears. She crawled to him, barely as tall as his knee, and placed her tiny hand on his arm. "You help? Why?" she asked softly. "Because you needed it," Gareth said simply. "And that's what decent folks do." She smiled weakly, whispering, "Decent." Hours passed. The storm outside grew stronger. The snow hit the window in thick waves. Gareth spent the afternoon fixing cracks in the walls and checking his traps. When he returned, he found the twins sitting by the fire, drawing strange glowing symbols on a piece of bark. "What's that?" he asked. Leary looked up. "Protection sign. Hide us from Sky Eyes." "Sky Eyes?" She pointed upward. "They watch from above. Find with light." Gareth frowned. He stepped outside to look up at the gray sky. Nothing but clouds. But deep in the back of his mind, he remembered the stories people in town used to tell. About light seen over the mountains, silent and fast. He'd always thought they were just myths. Now he wasn't so sure. When he came back in, Luna was giggling. She had found one of his carving knives and was tracing shapes into a piece of wood. Gareth gently took it away. "Easy there, that's sharp," Luna pouted. "I help," he smiled. "You'll help when you're bigger. Or taller." Leary laughed quietly. It was the first time he had heard that sound from her, like wind chimes in the forest. For a short while, the cabin felt alive, filled with warmth and light. Gareth even forgot about the red eyes and the claw marks. But peace never lasted long in the woods. That night, Gareth couldn't sleep. He kept hearing faint metallic sounds outside, like armor brushing against trees. Around midnight, he finally got up, pulled on his coat, and stepped outside with his lantern. The forest was quiet again, but not dead quiet. There was movement. He could feel it. He turned his lantern slowly and saw fresh prints leading away from the cabin, large, deep, and heavy. They glowed faintly in the snow, like something hot had melted through it. Suddenly, a beam of red light flashed between the trees, sweeping across the clearing. Gareth dropped to the ground, pulling his lantern off. The light passed over the cabin once, then again. It wasn't from any flashlight he'd ever seen. It hummed, like energy alive in the air. Inside, the twins must have sensed it too, because the windows began to glow faint blue from within. Gareth rushed back inside, closing the door quietly. Leary was already standing by the window, holding Luna close. "They found us," she whispered. "Who are they?" Gareth demanded. "Tell me what's happening." "They come to take us back," she said, tears in her eyes. "They call us tools, not children." Gareth's heart pounded. "Not if I can help it." The sound outside grew louder, footsteps mechanical, heavy. The light flickered through the cracks in the door. Gareth grabbed his axe and crouched low. "Get behind the stove," he whispered to the twins. "Don't move until I say." The door handle began to rattle. Then, a hard bang. The whole cabin shook. Another bang, harder. Gareth braced himself, axe ready. The door burst open in a flash of red light, wood splintering everywhere. 3 tall figures stepped in, metal suits, their helmets glowing with red visors. They were almost 7 feet tall, moving with precision. One of them scanned the room. Target detected. "Retrieve biological assets." Gareth's blood boiled. "You're not taking them." The lead figure tilted his head. Human interference unauthorized. They raised strange weapons that hummed with energy. Gareth didn't think, he charged. His axe came down hard, splitting through the armor of the first soldier. Sparks flew. The alien screamed, staggering back. The others fired, beams slicing through the air. Gareth dove behind the table, the blasts burning through the wood. Leary screamed, holding Luna tight. "Gareth." He rolled across the floor, grabbed a fallen beam from the fire, and threw it at the second soldier. It struck the chest plate, flames bursting across the armor. The creature roared, stumbling into the wall. Before Gareth could move, the leader aimed directly at him and fired. A red bolt hit Gareth's shoulder, knocking him to the ground. Pain exploded through his body. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself up. The alien walked closer, weapon humming again. "You will not interfere again," it said coldly. Then it reached out and pressed a burning sigil against Gareth's arm. The pain was blinding. The mark sank into his skin, glowing red like fire. Gareth screamed, falling to his knees. The alien spoke again. "You are marked. The Empire will claim what belongs to it." Then, as suddenly as they came, the three figures stepped back into the snowstorm and vanished into the trees. Gareth fell forward, panting, clutching his burned arm. The mark pulsed faintly beneath the skin like a living ember. Leary and Luna crawled out from hiding, crying. They tried to heal his wound with glowing blue hands, but it only made the mark burn brighter. "It no work," Leary whispered, terrified. "They mark you, link you. They can find you now." Gareth stared at the glowing symbol spreading across his arm like veins of fire. He didn't understand their technology, but he understood one thing. He was now part of whatever hunted them. He looked at the twins and said, voice low but firm, "Then we run. Tomorrow at dawn we leave this cabin." Luna's lip trembled. "Go where?" "Anywhere they can't find us," he said. "And if they do..." He picked up his axe and slammed it into the floor beside him. "They'll wish they hadn't." The twins looked at him, small and trembling but no longer alone. Outside, the red lights vanished into the snowstorm. The forest fell silent again, but now the silence carried a promise. The fight had just begun. The dawn came gray and quiet over the mountains. The storm had passed, leaving behind a white world where every tree stood frozen and still. Gareth Holt packed his small sled with food, tools, and blankets. His arm still burned where the red mark had been burned into his skin, but he ignored the pain. The twins stood near the fire, watching him with wide eyes. Leary held Luna's hand tightly. "We go now?" she asked softly. "Yes," Gareth said, tightening the straps on the sled, "before they come back." The cabin that had been his home for years now looked smaller, weaker, almost fragile. He glanced around once more. The chair by the fire, the axe marks on the door, the smell of pine and smoke. Everything he had built with his hands. Now he had to leave it behind. He picked up his axe, slung it across his back, and nodded toward the door. "Stay close to me, no noise. No lights." The twins nodded, faces pale and serious. Gareth pushed the door open. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the sharp smell of snow. The forest beyond was silent. Too silent. They started walking. The snow was deep, almost to Gareth's knees, and the sky above was dim with early light. Leary and Luna sat on the sled, wrapped in his fur coat, their silver eyes scanning the trees. Gareth's heavy boots sank deep with every step. His breath made clouds in the cold air. For the first hour there was only the sound of crunching snow and the creak of the sled. Then Luna suddenly whispered, "Gareth, look." He stopped. Up on the ridge, half hidden by the morning fog, something moved. Dark shapes, tall and metallic. He could barely see them, but he felt them. Watching. Waiting. "They found us already," he muttered. Leary trembled. "The mark on you." "They follow it." Gareth clenched his jaw. The mark on his arm began to pulse faintly. Glowing under the skin like a coal, he felt a strange pull, a vibration deep inside as if something was tracking him through the air itself. He turned off the trail, heading deeper into the forest. He knew every rock, every frozen stream, every hollow. If he could reach the mountain caves by nightfall, they might have a chance. Hours passed. The sky turned pale blue, then silver. The twins stayed silent, trusting him completely. Gareth's arm hurt worse now, but he pushed on. He kept thinking of their faces, the fear in their eyes, and something fierce burned inside him. He didn't know what these hunters wanted, but they wouldn't take those kids. Not while he was alive. By afternoon, the trees began to thin. Gareth stopped near a frozen river. He crouched down, examining the ground. No tracks ahead, but behind them, faint prints glowed red in the snow. The hunters were close. He moved quickly, crossing the river on the ice. Halfway across, a sound split the air. A metallic screech followed by a flash of red light. "Down!" Gareth shouted. A blast of energy hit the ice where they had stood seconds before. It exploded, sending shards flying. Gareth shielded the twins, his coat taking most of the impact. The air burned hot, the smell of ozone sharp in his nose. From the ridge above, 3 dark figures appeared, armored, glowing, silent. The same kind as last night, but more of them now. The hunters had come. "Run!" Gareth yelled, dragging the sled behind him as he dashed toward the trees. Beams of red light tore through the snow, melting it instantly. The twins screamed but held tight. Gareth reached the forest edge and ducked behind a fallen log. The hunters moved in formation, scanning the area. One raised a strange device. It beeped, glowing brighter as it pointed toward Gareth's direction. "They track your mark," Leary whispered urgently. "We must remove it." Gareth glanced at his arm. The red symbol burned brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Can you do it?" Leary nodded quickly. "Need time. You've got it," he said. "Stay low." He stepped out from behind the log, gripping his axe tightly. Snowflakes swirled around him as he shouted, "Hey, over here!" The hunters turned instantly. Red visors locked on his massive frame. "Target confirmed," one said in a mechanical voice. They raised their weapons, but Gareth was already moving. He ran fast, faster than anyone his size should have. His boots thundered through the snow. A blast hit the tree beside him, exploding bark everywhere. He ducked, rolled, and swung his axe. The blade struck one hunter's chest, slicing through armor with a burst of sparks. The alien fell backward into the snow, motionless. The others fired. One beam grazed Gareth's side, burning through his coat. He roared in pain but didn't stop. He slammed his axe into the second soldier's arm, tearing wires loose. Sparks lit the forest like lightning. Behind him, Leary and Luna chanted in their soft alien language, hands glowing blue. They touched the ground, sending waves of energy into the earth. The snow around them began to shimmer, rising like mist. The air grew thick with light, and Gareth felt warmth on his arm. The mark, bright and burning seconds ago, started to fade. Then, just as the last hunter aimed for the twins, Gareth turned and threw his axe. It spun through the air like thunder and hit the alien straight in the chest. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks, sending the creature flying backward. The forest went silent again, only the sound of snow falling, slow and gentle. Gareth dropped to his knees, breathing hard. "You two okay?" he asked between gasps. Leary nodded. "Mark gone. They cannot track now." He looked at his arm. The red glow was gone, replaced by faint scars. "Good," he said, standing. "Then we move, fast." But even as he spoke, a deep hum began to echo in the distance. The ground vibrated under their feet. Gareth looked up through the trees and froze. Above the clouds, a huge black shape descended. A ship, larger than any building he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with red light, and its engine sounded like thunder. Snow and wind whipped through the forest as the ship's shadow swallowed the light. Luna clutched his leg, terrified. "Big hunter," she whispered. Gareth's heart pounded. They brought a damn ship. The ground cracked as the vessel lowered between the mountains, its massive lights sweeping across the land. Smaller crafts shot out from its sides, drones fast and sharp, scanning the terrain below. "They're not stopping," Gareth said grimly. "We have to disappear completely." He led them to an old ravine nearby, a place only he knew. Years ago, miners had dug tunnels through the mountain before abandoning them. If they could reach the tunnels, maybe the ship's sensors wouldn't find them. The journey was hard. The snow was deep and the twins were exhausted. Gareth carried them both now, one in each arm, their small hands gripping his coat. Every step was a fight against the wind. The sky glowed red behind them as the ship searched, its engines roaring like a storm. At last, they reached the ravine. Gareth found a narrow crack in the rocks, barely visible under the snow. He pushed through, the twins following close. Inside, the air was cold and damp, but safe. Darkness wrapped around them. "We stay here," he said, setting them down gently. No sound. No light. The twins nodded, shivering. Leary pressed her glowing hands together, creating a soft blue sphere of light. It floated above them, dim and warm. Gareth sat near the entrance, gripping his axe. Outside, he could still hear the distant rumble of the alien ship. "How far will they go to get you?" he asked quietly. Leary looked down. "We are not just twins. We were made to heal our kind." Used us for war. War? Gareth repeated. She nodded sadly. We heal soldiers fast, but Empire want to control. They say we belong to them. We run away. They chase forever. Gareth stared at the ground. For a long time he said nothing. Then he looked up, eyes hard. Then they'll have to go through me first. Leary blinked at him, confused. Why, you human? We not your kind, he smiled faintly. Doesn't matter. You're just kids. I ain't letting monsters take kids. For the first time, both twins smiled. Tiny tears sparkled on their blue cheeks. They didn't understand every word, but they understood the feeling behind it. Protection, kindness, and warmth. Outside, the sky roared again. The hunters were close. Gareth gripped his axe tighter, listening. Snow fell over the entrance, hiding the cave completely. As the night settled, the red lights of the alien ship scanned the forest again. But this time, they passed right over the hidden ravine. The Empire had lost their signal. For now. Inside the cave, Gareth finally allowed himself to rest. The twins curled beside him, tiny heads resting on his arm. His body ached, but for the first time since this nightmare began, he smiled. The forest was quiet. The fire of the hunters was far away. But deep in his mind, Gareth knew this peace would not last long. They had only escaped the first wave. The next would be worse. The Empire never stopped. He looked down at the sleeping twins and whispered, You picked the wrong world to run to, but you found the right man to stand with you. The wind outside howled again, echoing through the mountain, and somewhere far away in the dark sky, the Empire's ship began to turn back.